The Adventist myth that we'll be looking at in this video is the belief that the Seventh-day Adventist Church organization is authoritarian. I'll give a Google definition of authoritarian. It states favoring or enforcing strict obedience to authority, especially that of the government, at the expense of personal freedom. And again, this myth states that the Seventh-day Adventist Church organization is authoritarian. Now, most people probably don't say that they believe the church is authoritarian or that they believe the church is restrictive of personal freedom, but this myth is often held in the mindset of us as individuals, and it comes out and shows itself in other things that we say. We talk about the top levels of the church controlling the lower levels, or we feel that there's too much hierarchy in the Adventist church. And that's, again, implying that we believe that the church is authoritarian, or to some degree, greater or lesser degree, depending on who you talk to. But again, I believe this is a myth, and I'll be discussing that in this video here. The first concept I want to emphasize here is that the Seventh-day Adventist Church organization, as an organization, exists for a purpose. Every organization exists for a purpose, even if they've lost focus on that purpose. But every organization exists for a purpose. The purpose of the Seventh-day Adventist Church organization is stated in its mission statement. This is a voted statement by General Conference in session and has been revised over the years. But this is the statement of the purpose of the Seventh-day Adventist Church organization. Listen to it or read it on the screen. The mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is to make disciples of all people, communicating the everlasting gospel in the context of the three angels' messages of Revelation 14, 6 through 12, leading them to accept Jesus as personal Savior and unite with his remnant church, discipling them to serve him as Lord and preparing them for his soon return. So these are the elements of the mission statement of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The methodology is also voted as well, and that's listed on the website, adventist.org, if you're interested. But this mission statement is, again, the driving engine behind the existence of the organization of the church. The Adventist Church is hierarchical, which is true, but I want to make an observation about that hierarchy as it relates to the mission of the church. Part of the essential part of this mission is to present the everlasting gospel to all the world. Now, the everlasting gospel being presented to all the world is a very big task. That's an impossible task for an individual, or even very difficult for a big group of individuals. So having a hierarchy actually serves the need to present the everlasting gospel in different ways. If we include in the hierarchy the individual, generally we talk about the hierarchy starting at the conference, union, division, the general conference. But if we start looking at the hierarchy at the individual, me, the individual church member, and then going all the way up to the general conference, we can notice that as we go higher in the hierarchy, the breadth of the focus increases, but the depth of the focus decreases. So me as an individual, I'm the most deep in terms of my interaction with the people to whom I'm trying to present the everlasting gospel. And on the other end of the spectrum, the general conference is the least deep in its association with the people to whom it's trying to present the everlasting gospel. The converse is also true, that at the general conference level, they are the most broad, the church is the most broad in its focus in whom it's trying to present the everlasting gospel to, whereas I as the individual on the other end of the spectrum is the least broad. I have a very few compared to the general conference in number of individuals that I'm trying to present the everlasting gospel. And this observation makes for a very helpful framework in understanding the relationship between the different levels. This observation emphasizes the strengths and the weaknesses of each level, and also it emphasizes the interrelationships that would logically exist to accomplish the task of presenting the everlasting gospel. So follow me if you will. I, as an individual, have, again, a relatively small number of people that I interact with. Let's say I'm broad and I have 10 non-Christian, maybe non-Adventist individuals that I'm trying to present the everlasting gospel to in the context of the three angels' messages. Again, that's a very small number in comparison to the group that the General Conference is trying to reach. However, I talk to these individuals. I see these people maybe daily, maybe weekly, maybe monthly. I talk to them on the phone. They're my friends on Facebook. I have very deep interactions with these people. And so I can meet them. I can speak to them. I can communicate this gospel to them in a way that, of course, the General Conference can. But even the lower levels, my own local church, my church will never be able to speak to the neighbor across the street, my neighbor across the street, in the depth that I can speak to them in. They don't have that relationship with them. They don't have that connection. However, when we go up a level and look at the local church, we see more breadth. The local church is in a community. My local church, Seabrook Seventh-day Adventist Church, is in a community. And just by being there physically, having a sign out on the front of the church, they are reaching a broader group of individuals than I am reaching in breadth. Now, those individuals know the church exists. They may have seen the name. Maybe they attend once a year if we have a Christmas program or a musical, something that draws them in. Very little depth in their relationship with the church, but it's a broader group of individuals that they're reaching. And so the church has, again, a different vantage point, not better or worse than the individual, but has more breadth, less depth. I have more depth, less breadth. And again, going up the hierarchy, you can see that. Again, another point that this brings out and helps with a framework for understanding the relationship between these elements of the church is that we can see from the lowest level, and it applies all the way up, the participation in the initiatives of every higher level is voluntary. Think about that. And I believe you'll agree that it's true. Participation in the initiatives of every higher level is voluntary. Now again, as we go higher, each level is trying to reach a broader group of individuals. They may have less depth, but they have a broader focus of individuals they're trying to reach. But their ability to accomplish that goal is dependent largely on the participation of the lower levels. So let's start again at the lowest of the levels, the individual member and the local church. If the personal ministries department at a local church says we're going to go door to door Sabbath afternoon at 4 o'clock, and we're going to knock on doors and we're going to ask people if they are interested in Bible studies. Well, if the personal ministries invites the members to participate in that initiative and no one comes, it will fail. Though they had a broader reach, they would fail in reaching that group because there's no participation from the lower level. However, I want to highlight that if it is the case that no one comes, though the members of the church aren't penalized for their lack of participation. Again, participation in the initiatives of the higher level is voluntary. Now, in that same church, if no one comes to that 4 o'clock initiative to go door to door, some at the church level, the church board, perhaps definitely the personal ministries department, would come to the conclusion, oh, maybe this church is not interested in personal ministry, isn't interested in evangelism. However, that doesn't have to be the case. I, as an individual, may be very engaged in evangelism with my neighbor across the street, with my coworker, with my relative. May be very engaged in personal ministry and evangelism. However, my personal ministry and evangelism is not being served best by that higher level. And so, again, because I'm being invited to follow the initiative of that higher level, if I don't do it, they may conclude that there's no willingness. What they need to be attentive to, though, is what is going on at the lower level and how can we serve and empower and provide resources for that lower level to be able to fulfill their individual mission. And also they can help to hear from the lower level how they can cooperate to reach that broader audience. But you see the necessity of the higher levels to depend on the lower levels. And again, there's no penalty. There's nowhere in any church, Adventist church, that it should be at least, that you would disfellowship the members who are not participating in the personal ministries department's initiatives. You don't disfellowship members because they won't go to prison ministries. No, they're invited, and hopefully the initiatives of that higher level are in harmony with the way that the lower level, the individual, feels that God is leading them and has empowered them for service and for ministry. That same principle, same concept applies with the level of the church and the relationship to the conference to the union to the division, and to the general conference. The same concept applies that the lower levels are invited to participate in the initiatives of the higher level. And there's no penalty if they don't participate. This is most easily demonstrated by the initiatives of the General Conference. The General Conference makes many initiatives, has always made many initiatives over the years, and there is a larger or smaller degree of participation in these initiatives by the lower levels. Right now, one of the initiatives of the General Conference is revival and reformation. There's a big push for revival and reformation for the world church. There are many churches who have never even heard of that. Many individual Adventists, millions I would say, of Adventists have never even heard that that's an initiative of the General Conference. However, there's no penalty. That's not even a problem as far as the General Conference is concerned, because they're inviting the membership to participate in this initiative, believing that it's helpful for the worldwide church. The Great Controversy Project, also an initiative of the worldwide church. The membership of the church, every lower level below the General Conference, is invited to be a part of this initiative. Again, just like we saw with the lower level, if this initiative is not in harmony with what the lower levels believe God is leading them to do, then they will not participate in it. But the response from the higher level, the General Conference, will not be, well, now we're going to penalize divisions, union, and conferences who are not on board with our mission. No, the response should be, how can we improve our listening ear to know what the Lord is leading the lower levels to do in mission? And how can we then use that, follow that, to reach the broader level that we've been entrusted with, right? How can we meet that? But again, a very important point, participation in the initiatives of a higher level is always voluntary. This goes right to the heart of the definition of authoritarian. This is entirely in contradiction to the definition of authoritarian. Authoritarian, again, is based on the principle that there is strict obedience to authority at the expense of personal freedom. But again, this is not the case in the Adventist Church. This is not the case at all. All right, I'll go ahead and stop here with this video. But in review, I just want to mention the high points of this presentation. First, as you increase in levels of hierarchy in the Adventist Church, you increase in breadth of responsibility to present the everlasting gospel, but you decrease in depth in ability to present that everlasting gospel. And then secondly, the participation of the lower levels in the initiatives of the higher levels is voluntary. And based on these and other things I'll present in another video, I believe that it is a myth to believe that the Seventh-day Adventist Church organization is authoritarian.